So again, my name is Antone Massey, and this is an introductory session for mental wellness training, wellness response training. This is offered through the MindBridge Institute in affiliation with the Florida A&M University College of Pharmacy and the Pharmaceutical Sciences Institute of Public Health and the Florida Blue Grant. Now, over the next 60 minutes, we're going to explore practical human-centered framework called the SAFE model. Now, this is a non-clinical response structure designed to help everyday people recognize emotional distress, respond with compassion, and guide others toward appropriate support. Now, before we begin, please make sure that you can see and hear me clearly, and we'll be asking questions in the chats and polls today. So make sure that those panels are accessible as well. Now, this training is designed for a wide range of people: students, instructors, professionals, community leaders, peer supporters, and ministry workers. So as you can see, we cover essentially the community. You don't need a mental health background to benefit from this training. MWRT, or mental wellness response training, is not therapy. It's not diagnosis. It's a structured human response model, a set of practical skills for the everyday moments when someone around you is struggling. Today is simply an introduction. Think of it as an overview of what MWRT is, why it matters, and how the SAFE model works. Now, our full training offers deeper practice, additional continuing education credits, and certification pathways. So I would like to invite you to explore our website at themindbridgeinstitute.org. And I heard earlier that we had visitors here from several different regions of the world. So if you would, in the chat, just share with us some of those areas in which you guys are joining us from here today. I see Hollywood, West Palm Beach, Palm Coast. We have some from Tampa, local. I'm also in Tampa. Well, welcome, welcome. Before we dive into the content, I want to establish a few shared agreements for our time together. Our shared space agreements include confidentiality. Please be aware that what we share in here today stays in here. We want to create a safe place for you guys to be able to express yourselves if need be. Respect. We honor different experiences and perspectives. No interrupting. We want to provide space for everyone because everyone's voice does matter, and your participation is optional to the extent that you're never required to disclose personal experiences. If you so choose to do so, you're more than welcome. But no diagnosis, and we've talked about that briefly already. And in this session, we don't ask you to assess anyone or assess your own mental health for that matter. Mental wellness is a personal and sometimes sensitive topic. Some of you may have your own experiences with emotional distress, your own or someone you care about. You are never required to disclose anything personal today. And if at any point the content feels difficult, please feel free to step away from your screen. Just take a breath and simply observe. We will also address what to do if a crisis disclosure occurs during this session. So, shall we all agree to these together? Please respond in the chat with a thumbs up or a yes. Wonderful, wonderful. I see some yeses and some thumbs up. Good, good. So by the end of this 60-minute session, you'll be able to achieve 4 specific learning objectives. Now, these objectives are designed to be practical and immediately applicable, not clinical, nor are they theoretical. The first objective today is to identify common signs of emotional distress in collegiate, professional, and community settings. Describe the purpose, scope, and limits of MWRT as a non-clinical support framework. And third, apply the four-part SAFE, S-A-F-E model to a brief support conversational scenario. Distinguish is our last learning objective toward today, which is distinguish between supportive response, appropriate referral, and emergency de-escalation. Now, these four objectives will guide everything we do today. We'll revisit them at the close of our session. So why does this training matter? Let's start with some context. Mental health challenges are common across every environment: classrooms, workplaces, faith communities, and neighborhoods. Research consistently shows that most people experiencing distress do not immediately seek professional help. Instead, they turn to someone they trust: a teacher, a friend, a coworker, a supervisor, or a community leader. In short, they usually turn to you. That means that oftentimes you are the first point of contact. And what you say and what you don't say in those first few moments can significantly influence whether a person feels seen and supported or dismissed and alone. MWRT is designed to specifically for that gap. It's not therapy, it's simply a bridge. So in the slide, you see there's a chat prompt down at the bottom. We're actually going to pause on that chat prompt, and I want to ask you guys, if you could in the chat, just explain to me your understanding or what is your definition of emotional distress? What does that look like for you, or what does that mean? When we refer to the term emotional distress, I see disconnected between reality, extreme overwhelming feeling, nervousness, anxiousness, disruption to daily life, feeling hopeless, panicked and overwhelmed, the overwhelming need to slap someone who needs it. I like that one. Feelings that are overwhelming and unable to process at time. Great, great. I like all those. Those were all good. So emotional distress, believe it or not, is everyone experiences that. Let me start with that part. Everyone experiences some form of emotional distress, and usually it is centered around uh, life changes or life situations. So emotional distress is a state of severe mental anguish or psychological suffering, such as anxiety, which was said in the chat, depression, fear, or profound grief. Now, this is usually caused by traumatic events, negligence, or intentional misconduct. So, emotional distress is not a single mental illness, but it's a broad term for for psychological suffering. Some of the symptoms, which some were described in the chat, include intense anxiety, chronic fears, depression, feelings of being overwhelmed. A lot of people responded with that one, or hopelessness, sleep disturbances, nightmares, insomnia, things of that nature, and cognitive difficulties. Now, some of the physical manifestations, it would include, it often presents itself alongside physical illness, or in some cases can cause them. And then the impact on your life. I think a few of you mentioned that in the chat as well. It is often characterized by a loss of enjoyment of life, social withdrawal, and an inability to perform daily tasks. Now, the difference between emotional distress and regular stress, now you have to keep in mind, stress is a typical reaction to our daily life demands. We all experience that. Now, distress occurs when that stress becomes too intense, prolonged, or overwhelmed. So now if we go back to that chat prompt, what do people in your setting first notice emotional distress? Where do you first notice emotional distress? Let's see what we have in the chat. I know for me, a lot of times it happens on the job, and I think it was Dr. Jackson who put in the chat wanting to slap someone and having to restrain yourself. That can be very stressful. So, customer frustration on the job, student affairs, logging into the work network. Yeah, we have a million passwords, so trying to remember them all can be challenging. And setting in the classroom, it frequently occurs when learners are challenged or required to respond. That's true. Good, good. Sounds like we have a good understanding of what emotional distress is. Work, home, driving, road rage, huh? So let's look at emotional distress, what it can look like in a real setting. Emotional distress doesn't always look like a crisis. Often it's subtle. A student who stops submitting work, a coworker who stops making eye contact, a participant who says it's fine in a way that really doesn't feel fine. So if we look at some of the signs that you can notice without diagnosing, we've kind of talked about them in the chat and we've used them in the definition, the working definition. However, behavioral changes, withdrawing, isolation, sudden shifts in mood, irritability, sleep disruption. They used to be this happy person. Now every time you speak to them, they're irritable or they're snappy or they're short. Their conversations are very short when they're talking to you. It's one word answers and then they're trying to move on from you. Performance shifts, we discussed that in the chat as well. Declining grades, missed deadlines, reduced participation, and multiple errors. And then there are those verbal cues. I just can't do this anymore. I just don't see the point. Why should I bother? Nobody cares. And then express hopelessness, statements of worthlessness, being a burden, or not wanting to continue. So MWRT teaches you to notice these signs without assuming the worst and without diagnosing. Your job is not to identify what is wrong clinically. Your job is to simply notice the concern early enough to respond with care. Recognition isn't about certainty. It's about paying attention. So now we're going to test your knowledge. And what I would ask is when the poll question comes up, hold your answer until I give you the cue, and then we can start putting your response in the chat. That way we don't influence anyone else's response to that. So our first poll question, which of the following may be a sign of emotional distress? Give you a moment or two to ponder that. Which of the following is a sign of emotional distress? And you can go ahead and enter your response. I see a lot of people are doing that. Okay, good. The majority of you are putting D is all of the above, which is actually the correct answer. So good job there. And so our second poll question, true or false? Recognizing emotional distress means you are responsible for diagnosing what is happening. Is that true or is that false? Good, wonderful. I have correct answer is false. MWRT teaches recognition and response, not diagnosis. The goal is to notice early enough to respond with care and connect the person to the appropriate support. So now that we know how to detect distress, let's establish the strict boundary line of our response role. This is one of the most important distinctions in MWRT. What this training is and what it is not. MWRT does not ask you to become a therapist, a counselor, or a crisis manager. You notice that reoccurring theme? I keep saying that. We don't require you to have any clinical skill. It asks you to be a human being who is present, aware, compassionate, and willing to take the next steps. So if you look at the slide here, what MWRT is in the left column, a structured human response model, a way to recognize distress early, a way to respond with compassion. It's a way to communicate more safely and maintain healthy boundaries. It's also a way to guide people towards support. And more specifically, it's prevention oriented skill building. And then of course the left column describes your role. The right column describes what stays with the trained professional. MWRT is a bridge. Your job is to keep people connected until they can access the appropriate level of care. So, does this distinction help clarify what we're doing here today? Good, good. So, we have another poll question for you. MWRT is best described as A, a therapy model for mental illness, B, a diagnostic tool, C, a structured non-clinical response framework, or D, a replacement for professional care. Could you put your answers in the chat? Okay. I'm seeing a reoccurring theme there, so the correct answer is C. Good job. And then our next poll question, which statement best reflects an MWRT aligned response? I know exactly what you should do. B, let me diagnose what is going on. C, I'm here with you. Let's think through what support may help. Or D, you shouldn't feel this way. The correct answer is C. And you see, C is the perfect illustration of collaborative presence, contrasting it sharply against, let's say, option A, the fixing flex. That's what we call that, the fixing flex. And well, let me show you how to take care of this. That's not an MWRT approach. So now we're ready to activate our primary operational tool, and that's the SAFE model. This is the heart of the training, the SAFE model. SAFE is not a script. It is an acronym, but it's not a script. It's simply a structure. It's a way to organize your response so that in difficult moments, you have a clear and compassionate path forward, a compass, if you will, a guide for how to respond in emotional stress situations when you're addressing someone. So each letter stands for a distinct step. As you can see in the slide, the S is for stay present, A is ask openly, the F feel with, and E is encourage support. So we will explore each one in depth. But first, notice what SAFE does not include. It doesn't include diagnosing. It doesn't include advising, solving, or fixing. SAFE begins with presence and ends with connection to support. So if you look in the top right corner, this is the SAFE model badge. And it essentially represents the framework we're talking about here and how to walk together with people. So let's talk about the S, which stands for safe. Stands for stay present. Now, this sounds simple, but it is deeply countercultural. When someone is in distress, our instinct or our natural desire is to often fix, advise, minimize, or redirect. Well, have you tried this? Or I'm sure it's not that bad. Let me tell you what worked for me. Well, the first step of MWRT asks you to resist all of that and simply just be there. Staying present means slowing down, regulating your own natural response, making eye contact, adjusting your posture, being fully available before you say a single word. Research in trauma-informed care consistently confirms that feeling truly heard is one of the most healing experiences a person can have. That healing begins with presence, not with advice. If you really reflect on this, on the S here, and stay present, it's very important that a person who has built up the courage to express themselves to you or has come to you seeking advice or help, that they feel heard. If you're distracted while they're talking to you or you're looking at your phone and they're expressing themselves to you, you're not present. So you've already deviated from the safe model. Remember, this is a compass to help you focus on how to engage someone who is dealing with emotional distress. So being present, letting them know based on your body posture, your movement, your engagement, it lets them know that, hey, I am actually here for you. Because once you have conveyed that message to them, it's a lot easier for them now to do what we call what is step A. And that is when we ask openly, they're now able to respond to the things that you're asking them without the one word short answers. So as you can see in the slide, the A in SAFE re, um, reflects on ask openly. So once you are present with someone, the next is to invite them to share more using open-ended and non-judgmental questions. Notice the difference between the questions that open the conversation and questions that close the conversation. So if you look at the slide, the first one, can you tell me more about what feels hardest right now? Or how long have you been feeling this way? What would feel most helpful to you right now? Questions you don't want to answer, or questions that are close-ended or would shut the conversation down or have them withdraw. Here are some examples. You're not thinking about hurting yourself, are you? That's yes or no. That's just a yes or no. And then you have to probe more in order to get them to express themselves. Or why would you feel that way? That conveys a feeling of judgment, or you're not really here to support me, you're here to judge me or tell me how what I'm doing or how I'm feeling is wrong. So a leading question like, you're not thinking about hurting yourself, are you? It tends to communicate that what you hope the answer will be, you're kind of leading them towards the answer. It may shut them down. The very disclosure that person needs to make. They may change their mind simply based on your response. Now, an open question like, "Can you tell me more about what feels the hardest?" That invites the person to share without any pressure involved. Remember, your goal is curiosity, not interrogation. We're not here to interrogate them. We're here to show concern and not evaluate. So, what did you notice about the difference between those question types? Any comments in the chat? When we talk about, there we go, closed-ended versus open-ended. They're not judgmental. Encourages discussion. Allows the person to feel comfortable. That is very, very important. So the F in SAFE stands for feel with. Now, this is about empathy, not sympathy, and not advice. Empathy says, "I'm in this with you. I see your pain. I don't have to understand it fully in order for me to honor it." Sympathy creates distance. "I feel so sorry for you." But empathy creates a connection. "That sounds incredibly hard. I'm glad you told me." If you look at the slide here, the third step, we validate, don't minimize. "That sounds really hard. I can see why you feel that way." Empathize, but don't fix. Reflect, don't redirect. "It sounds like you've been caring a lot." And then stay with them. Resist the urge to share your own story. In other words, don't turn the situation into examples about you and how you triumph. It's one thing to help guide them towards or make suggestions about how they may be able to address something, but then it goes back to what we talked about earlier. We're not here to fix. We're here to be a presence so that we can guide them to the appropriate um, professional help if that is what the situation calls for. Notice that none of these responses involve fixing. We just talked about that. Redirecting, minimizing, or sharing your own experience. Feel with means you stay in their world. Don't pull them into your own. This is also the step where boundary awareness begins. You can feel with someone without losing yourself in their distress. That distinction is very important. And it's something MWR teaches more fully in the complete training. So, in short, what we're saying is, you can't adopt the feeling or the impression that you're the only person that can help them. Or you go home at the end of the night and you're restless. You can't sleep until you call and you check on them, and now they've become your purpose in life. That's blurring the boundaries. Now, the E in SAFE stands for encourage support. After you've been present, after you've asked open questions and felt with someone, the final step is to help them take a next step toward support. Now, this is not about pushing them away. We're not trying to get rid of them. It's about walking alongside them towards something that can actually help them. So if we look at the slide here, there are uh, some ways to encourage support, and that is trusted person. These are the people who we can direct them to depending on the level of need that they have at the moment. Okay, whether it be a trusted person, that mentor that they've grown up confiding in, a faith leader, or an advisor. If they're on a campus or on a workplace or at work, you may consider the counseling center or EAP services, which is offered through the majority of employment situations now. And then student services, if you are a student or on a campus setting. And then, of course, there's always HR. And then with crisis lines, they we now have the 988 universal number um, for suicide and crisis lifeline, and then there's also the crisis text line as well. Those are also confidential. In most cities and states, there's also the 211 directory, which offers a lot of services and support avenues as well. And then there is always the emergency services. They're always on standby for us. Depending if the situation warrants it, then especially if that individual is in immediate risk, then we would call 911 and or encourage them to go to emergency rooms or to any of the standalone psychiatric facilities. But again, it's going to be based upon what the situation warrants for them. Now, these levels, they represent a pathway. Most conversations don't immediately require emergency services. Most conversations end with a gentle suggestion. Would you be open to talking with someone at the counseling center? Or do you have someone in your life that you can trust that you could share this with? But MWRT also teaches you to recognize when the situation requires urgency. If someone expresses an intent to harm themselves or others, the response then shifts. And we cover this more in depth in the next module. But for now, know this: encouraging support is an act of care. It's not abandonment. We're not pushing them off. We're staying within our wheelhouse so that they can get the appropriate and the necessary support that they actually need. So let's move forward with another. One second. I am not able to see anything in the chat other than my responses. Should I be able to view? Um, I think if you change your settings um, where you're sending the messages, I think if you select everyone, then you should be able to see everyone else's responses. I hope that was correct, and I hope that helps. So our next poll question, a person says, I don't think I can keep doing this. What is the most MWRT aligned first step? Is it A, tell them everything will be fine? B, stay present, slow down, and respond with calm concern? C, change the subject? Or D, simply tell them that they are overreacting? I see a lot of B's in the chat. Let's see how we did there. Only hosts and panelists can see everyone's. Let's see. Correct answer is B. Stay present, slow down, respond with calm concern. Now, B maps directly to the stay present portion of the SAFE model. Let's take another poll question here. Which response best reflects asking openly or ask open? A, you're not thinking about hurting yourself, are you? B, why would you say that? C, can you tell me more about what feels hardest right now? Or D, you just need to calm down. Good. The correct answer is C. Option C represents the perfect deployment of which particular model? Which portion of the SAFE model? Can anyone answer that in the chat? That directly responds to S, A, F, or E. Good, good. It's a perfect deployment of A, ask openly, because it creates space instead of closing the conversation while simultaneously reinforcing the S, stay present, by showing interest and concern. So I saw a lot of A's, but I also saw some S in there also. So good job on catching that. It can fall in either one of those categories. So let's put the entire sequence to the test with an integrated simulation scenario. A student or a coworker appears withdrawn, stops participating, and says, I don't think I can keep doing this. I'd like to invite you to take about 60 seconds to think through these 4 questions. You can type your responses in the chat, just one word or phrase is fine, or simply reflect privately. If you would, give me a thumbs up in the chat if you guys are ready to move forward, if you've had enough time to reflect, or if you need a little more time, that's fine as well. Okay, so let's walk through this together. So the stay present, which is the S, first, I would not rush to speak. I might say nothing for a brief moment, making sure that I'm making eye contact, perhaps leaning slightly forward and let my body say, I'm here. Communicate to them that yes, I'm present. How can I help you? And then the A, ask openly. And then I might say, it sounds like things really feel heavy right now. Can you tell me more about what that's like for you? You haven't closed the conversation off. You've invited him to share more. You've invited him to open up. One of the things that a lot of people overlook is that when someone is in a crisis situation or they are in emotional distress, being able to just voice their concerns or voice how they're feeling lifts a lot of weight. So in this particular step here, we're giving him that opportunity to do that. And then the F, feel with. When they share more, I reflect back. That sounds exhausting. I can hear how much weight you're carrying. I'm really, really glad that you told me. And then the E in the SAFE model, I would encourage support. So finally, you don't have to figure this out alone. Would you be open to connecting with someone at the counseling center? I can help you find the information if that would help. What you're communicating in a response similar to that is, hey, I might not be able to help you as much as you need, but I can walk with you to make sure that the support that will truly benefit you, we can connect you with. And I won't leave you, or I will help you achieve that status before this relationship ends or before this conversation ends. Notice what I did not do. I didn't say it'll be fine. I didn't offer solutions. I didn't share my own story. I didn't dismiss or minimize what they were saying. I was present. I was curious, emphatic, and connected them to appropriate support. So in the chat, I'd like to invite you to share some of the things that you may have noticed in this scenario, or some of the approaches that you would have used in terms of the model, how you would have approached that. I see stay present, didn't share my own story, you're encouraged, let them know that they're not alone, showed active listening, body language, offered to help find additional help. Good, good. I would have listened and definitely referred to counseling services, asked to elaborate. Good. So now, one of the most important and often most difficult parts of MWRT is understanding the role of boundaries. Boundaries are not barriers to compassion. They are simply what makes compassion sustainable. So, referring to the slide, boundaries, referrals, and safe next steps. There is a distinction here. There's a supportive response, there's a referral, and there's emergency escalation. These are the three levels of response that you would apply or consider when you're interacting with someone who is dealing with emotional distress. So, with supportive responses, we listen, we reflect, and we validate, encourage connection to trusted support or campus resources. We spoke about that earlier. But then there's also the referral, which is similar to the supportive response. We strongly encourage professional help, provides resources, follow up, notify a supervisor if appropriate. And this particular level is when there is distress without imminent harm. And then our last category is emergency escalation. And this is when there is an imminent risk of harm, like someone discloses that they want to harm themselves, or they've been considering it, or they've actually made the attempt. So, what you should do is stay calm. Don't leave the person alone, but you should call 911 or campus safety or security and notify designated personnel. The important thing to remember here is in situations like this is where your role shifts. We do not promise secrecy. We make it clear that in this particular instance, I need to help you ensure that you're safe and you're okay. So we're going to make that conversation. We're going to make that call. Now, these three levels, they represent a spectrum. Most everyday situations call for a supportive response, which is that first category. Some do require referral, and a small number require emergency escalation. MWRT teaches you to make that distinction so you can respond appropriately without either underreacting or overreacting. A key principle, healthy boundaries. It means you can care deeply about someone without becoming their only source of support. I think we talked about that a little earlier in the training here. You are a bridge. You walk alongside someone and then connect them to the support they need. That is MWRT. So let's complete our final mastery verification check on these critical safety boundaries. So our poll question reads, which situations require urgent escalation rather than only supportive listening? A, tired after a long week. B, nervous before an exam. C, expresses clear intent to harm self or others. or D, stressed after a long day? I am seeing a lot of C's, and the correct answer is C. Express intent to harm self or others. And in these moments, your role shifts, as we mentioned earlier. You move from supporter to safety connector. You do not manage this alone. You do not promise secrecy. You involve emergency services, crisis hotlines, or appropriate authorities. And our next poll question, healthy boundaries mean you can care about someone without becoming their only source of support. Is that true or false? Okay. See a lot of truths in there, so let's see. Correct answer is C. Healthy boundaries mean you can care without being someone's only support. If at any point, a, if at any point, you've seen something, heard something that's concerning, don't ignore it. Thank you for sharing your time with me. Thank you for your attention. If you are interested in learning more about MWRT or the MindBridge Institute, please visit our website. I will actually put it in the chat if I can get my keyboard to wake up. There we go. And then also, there are certification pathways available as well. And if you need anything further, please reach out to us through email. I have some handouts that I would like to, that I forgot to upload earlier. I will add to the chat as well. Do we have any questions at this time, though? If so, please put them in the chat. We have a few minutes. I can answer one or two. So, how do you separate your feelings from your patients? That is a great question. And what I would share with you is it's okay to feel with, but not for. So in other words, it's okay to understand how they feel, what they're feeling, and actually discuss it with them, but you can't absorb that pain or that stress with them. You have to remind yourself that you need to be grounded as the only healthy option for being able to assist them. So there is a difference between internalizing their pain and actually just helping them to work through it. What if your own child going through something? What if your own child going through something and they do not feel comfortable talking to anyone else? If they don't feel comfortable talking to you or someone else, immediate person, then I would encourage them to explore professional options. One of the things about counseling, and a lot of people, they tend to forget that just like friendships, you don't mesh with everyone. You don't you what's the phrase that I'm looking for? You don't identify with everyone. So sometimes when you seek counseling, the first counselor might not be the correct one for you. They have to feel comfortable with that person, and that counselor has to feel comfortable with them in order for those relationships to flourish. So what I would suggest is, if you've explored the counseling or professional options before and that didn't seem too successful, try again. because just as there are many personalities within the world, there are many personalities within the professional or the counseling arena as well. So it's about making that match happen. Okay, with that being said, let's see. How can I remember all this in an emergency situation? That's a great question. And so what I would say to you is our program, the SAFE model, I think I said this earlier in the training, it's a compass. There is no script. There is no right, there is no to-do list. There's not an A, B, C, or D. This is a guideline to help you to interact with individuals and ask them open questions and simply be present. If you really truly think about it, you do this on a daily basis, whether it's a crisis situation or just someone wanting to share, something that they've experienced. When someone says, let me tell you about my day, you're leaning in, you're listening, you're showing that posture of interest. So these are things that you do naturally. When they start sharing their story, you start asking questions because you want to know more, right? And so when you're feeling with them, you're either happy or you're sad when they share the good news or the bad news. You're sharing, you're expressing that with them. You're feeling with them, right? And then the E in that situation, you're encouraging them. Hey, well, great job. Keep going. So we do these things on a natural level. The SAFE model, what it does is it gives you that compass. So when you're in that emergency situation, you have somewhat of a guide or a reference point. No one is 100% perfect. What matters is that you're present. What matters is that you're giving forth that effort to be that support for someone. Because again, remember, we're just the bridge to support, to get them to where it is that they want to be. So as long as you stay present, if you just remember the S, you won. You've been a success.
Mr. Massey,
Mr.
you have a
Massey,
question
before
from
I'm
Dr.
sorry.
Chinita Carter.
Can you
She's
read it
asking,
for me?
would this framework be the same for pediatrics?
Yes. This framework would apply directly to pediatrics as well, primarily because even with children, their cognitive abilities might not be as developed as the adult arena. However, the fact that you are present, most times when children are acting out, they're acting out seeking attention. And with that being said, that presence is what can aid in that situation. But this is very applicable to that setting as well, especially when they get in their tantrum or acting out modes.
Mr. Massey,
Yes,
would
ma'am.
you be able to put your email address in the chat? Because there are several very interesting questions on how to help people remotely, or if somebody is using that every time as a response to their situation, or whether you should offer to pray for them if they're going through a situation that's challenging. So I'm sure people would love to hear you answer those questions directly.
Absolutely. I
Yeah.
put two email addresses in the chat, and then um, we can also be reached through our website. There is a contact us um, portion of the website where they can reach out to me directly as well. But I've placed two email addresses in the chat as well as the web address. So yes, please feel free to reach out with any questions or concerns or interest in learning more about the training and or becoming a certified practitioner.
What an inspiring presentation. I really learned a lot, and I feel like this is very enlightening, Mr. Massey. Thank you so much. And like I said, if you want to answer some of the questions online right now while Dr. Hill is speaking, but we really appreciate your presence. And I'm sure if everybody could clap, we would say thank you so much for your presentation.